Hey, bass lovers! Welcome to Strictly Bass Live episode 2. I'm very excited and I hope you are too. Let me introduce myself. I'm Mischa Marcks and I'm the guy who thinks that bass is all you need. Today we're gonna put bass into the spotlight and debunk the myth that bass is a boring slash limited instrument. We're gonna show you with two different flavors of solo bass what all is possible on this best instrument of them all. And yeah, I've got something special because today's my birthday. Ooh, ooh. Woohoo! Birthday! Isa! And I've got a couple of surprises for you, a noise giveaway, and I've got an extra special guest from Ireland. The man has played with artists like Jamiroquai, Keziah Jones, PJ Harvey, and for the hip hop fans out there, MC Solar might ring a bell. So, shall we bring him on stage? I can't hear you. Literally, I can't hear you, so you're gonna have to type in the chat that you want Karl on stage. Karl, we're gonna need you on stage. Let me introduce to you Karl Clews, the bass player. Here we go. Hey Karl, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Are you just as excited as I am?
I'm very excited, very nervous, I have to say. So it's a weird setting, this, isn't it? I kind of find it a lot easier when there's people to look at.
Yeah, you kind of know what you're doing when you've got some faces looking at you.
That's right.
I don't know if you played any shows during the corona time. I've played 2 shows with people in the audience with masks on and like sitting 6 feet apart. And to be honest, that wasn't much better than this. It really felt disconnected and, well, now we're here. At least we've got people talking back at us. And we too can talk a little bit and look into each other's eyes. Okay, so I'm going to leave the stage to you. You can tell us a little bit about your solo bass project and about your music, and then play a couple tunes for us. I'm really looking forward to that. You ready to go?
I guess I am, yeah.
Okay, I guess it's your turn then.
Thanks a lot. Well, yeah, my name's Karl, Karl Clews. You might know me from my YouTube channel. And I think what I'm going to start off with is the tune that kind of started all this solo bass thing for me. Um, Basically, I've always done the solo bass thing. I started off as a guitar player, classical guitar player. So it just, when I moved to the bass, it never really occurred to me that I couldn't do the same thing on the bass. So I always tried to do these little solo things. And right at the beginning, I would record these things and then just forget about them, forget how I did it. and then I'd move on to the next one. So what I started doing was recording them in front of a camera, so I could see what my fingers were doing, and I'd recall a lot quicker how the pieces went. Because I hate writing these things down. You know, I find that tedious and the most boring part of the process. So I like to just play these things, let them go, move on to the next thing. But I had to have a record of them, so I started putting these things up on YouTube.
Karl, I hate to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
But you gotta put your mouth closer to the microphone.
All
the
right,
moment you move away, it's really hard to understand you, and you've got a lot of interesting stuff to say. I'd hate to miss out, and I hate everyone else to miss out. So.
Yep. All right then. Okay.
Awesome. That's much
try
better. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, you can tell I'm a bass player, not a singer. I've got crappy microphone technique. But anyway, yeah. As I was saying, I started putting these solo bass arrangements I was making up on YouTube just for my own record, so that I would remember them later if I ever needed them again. And I was doing this for about 2 years until I put one up and it got shared on Reddit, on Facebook. I think Bootsy Collins, of all people, shared it. And that one just went viral. And it really showed me that there was an audience for this kind of thing. So I'm going to start with that one. It's a tune you should know. It's a tune I should know. I hope I remember it after all this time. This is called the theme from The Pink Panther by Henry Mancini. I'll just move this out of the way. I'm terribly sorry, I'll have to start again. Nerves, you see, it's a difficult environment, this. Thank you very much. I made it through there.
Woohoo!
Thank you very
Imagine
much.
a stadium roaring in awe.
Thank you ever so much. Yeah, like I said, it's a difficult environment, this. Tiny little room, no feedback, not knowing how it's sounding out there. So do send us a message if the sound isn't great or if there's too much reverb or anything like that. Put a little bit of reverb on here. I'll just clarify that for this particular performance, I am going completely old school. This is solo bass au naturel, as it were. I don't have any loop pedals, drum machines or anything going. I thought I'd make a nice intimate little show. All I have is a little reverb pedal, so do tell me if I'm using too much of that. So
just the right amount.
Yeah, sounds good to you.
Sounds awesome. Um, Let me just jump in there. I forgot to explain how this whole thing is working to our audience. Carl and
Mhm.
I had a little sound check, so he's introduced, and that kind of made me forget to introduce you to it. So, on the bottom of the page, you can see a couple of buttons. There's an ask question button. Most importantly, if you have a question, please don't ask it in the chat. Click on the ask a question and post it there so we don't have to scroll through the whole chat and find it. Then there's also obviously the chat button for everyone who didn't see that yet. You can write in the chat and give us, how would you say, written applause and feedback. Definitely tell us how it sounds. I think it sounds great, Carl. For my taste, you could even add a little bit more reverb, but you just set your more conservative, and it's just right for me. It sounds live.
Good.
Um,
Good. Complete with mistakes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna leave you to it.
All right. So the next tune I'm going to play, in between doing these arrangements of well-known tunes on YouTube, I like to write my own little bits and pieces. And in fact, in January, I put out this album. This is called Dissident. I hope you can see that. I'm a long way from the camera, so it looks like that. Anyway, it's available from Bandcamp. If you look up my name there, you'll find that. And that's a collection of my own compositions arranged solely for the bass. Some of them are solo bass, just one single bass playing the whole tune. Some of them are multiple bass compositions where I'm playing a bass line, I'm playing chords on the bass, and then I'm playing a melody line on the bass over the top, all recorded separately. But the idea is just, as Mischa's saying here, my mission is to make people more aware that the bass isn't just that thing that goes in the background. Okay, there's a lot more to the bass, and it can do a lot more, especially given modern materials and modern technology. So anyway, this next piece is an original of mine. It's on this album, on Dissident. As I said, I started off as a classical guitar player, and I remember from all the exams and things that I did as a kid, we used to study a lot of studies by guys like Fernando Sor, Carulli, Carcassi, kind of Italian composers, and these exercises in the form of a piece of music, fingering exercises really. And this was kind of a tribute to that. This is a piece of mine I call Etude. Thank you. We need a sound effects button, don't we? That might be worth introducing for a future event. A nice sound effects button for stadium applause. It would help my ego anyway. All right, so I'll move on to my third song. Let me think. Now with this one, again, this is from my YouTube channel. It's not one I wrote, it's one I arranged. On my YouTube channel, I started off doing kind of specialising in movie themes and TV themes. Those seem to go quite well, but you run out of those very quickly, especially anything past the 80s. There don't seem to be any movie themes or TV themes worth covering after the 80s, and I did most of those. So I started doing arrangements of jazz standards. Now I've always played jazz standards in jazz bands, you know, jazz trios and so on, where I'm just required to do the walking bass line. And I've always enjoyed these, but I kind of found soloing difficult, and I'd heard that obviously the way to solo on a jazz tune is to know the head, to know the melody, and bass players traditionally aren't good at learning the melodies. We just play the bass line, let other guys do the melodies. So it was actually a very interesting exercise for me to start arranging jazz standards, because obviously I had to learn the head, I had to learn the melody, and that then fed back into playing with jazz groups, because I was much more able to solo on those changes, having learnt those melodies. So, you know, it's something I'd recommend, even if you're not going to play solo bass arrangements. It's worthwhile learning these heads just to help your improvisation in a jazz band setting. Anyway, this one, it's an old tune from the UK, I think. Certainly it's named after a place in the UK. It may have been a show tune or something like that, like a lot of those old jazz standards were. This is called A Nightingale Sang in Berkeley Square. I think it was somebody called Manning Sherwin who wrote it. Not a well-known composer, but I think it's a beautiful tune. And I'm particularly happy with this one because on the bass we don't have a lot of range. Certainly on a 4-string bass, you're limited by how far you can stretch on the neck. So that means most of the time I'm just playing a bass note and a melody note, and it's difficult to get in those jazz harmonies in between. But this one, it worked out quite nicely. It just fell under the fingers that you can get some lovely chords in them, and it demonstrates how nice chords sound on the bass, which you know, anybody who doesn't really play the bass or hasn't experimented doesn't realise that the bass is a lovely instrument for chords. So I'm going to have a go at this one. This is called A Nightingale Sang in Berkeley Square. short and sweet. Thanks again. Your applause, and I'll hand back at this point to Mischa.
You're getting a lot of love in the comments, Carl. Everyone's loving the sound and your compositions and arrangements. So.
Excellent. Well, I have to put part of that down to this bass. It's a beautiful sounding bass, very new to me, built by Bogart basses in Germany, actually. And it's the most wonderful sounding bass I've ever played anyway, so a lot of it is down to this very musical sounding bass.
Don't pretend. Okay, so I've got a question directly from the live audience here in this room about the headlessness of your basses. What's that about? I mean, I know, and we've already talked about it, but maybe let the audience know what's that about. I'm gonna put you on full screen so they can see what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, there you go. As you see, it looks kind of chopped off, doesn't it? What you may also see, let me just turn this down. We've got another one here, also headless. And I don't know how wide the shot is, but there's another headless one there. So yes, I like my headless basses. Now, I know there's a lot of resistance, certainly here in Ireland, to headless basses. It's the aesthetics of it. People think you've got to have something there; it just looks weird without it. I don't agree. I mean, I like the look of it. I've always liked the look of it. I grew up in the 80s. I'm an 80s kid, so I saw guys like Mark King leaping around the stage with basses with lights on and no head. So that's my taste in aesthetics. So the headless thing doesn't bother me at all, the look of it. But I just think it's so much more practical, you know. I tend to use double ball end strings, which, you know, most companies sell those, so they're easily available. But what it means is, you know, I have broken strings in the middle of songs before now and had them replaced within 30 seconds. There's no winding around and around at the end of the headstock. You can actually just slot it in there, slot it in here, tighten it up. By the way, people usually ask, how do you tune that thing? You tune it down here. So, and you can be up and running again in 30 seconds. You know, I got to the middle section, let the keyboard player handle the bass in his left hand, changed the string, and I was back in for the rest of the song. So in that respect, really convenient. Also the fact that it's you know, it's a good 6 inches shorter than a regular bass. So, you know, on a cramped stage, you're not going to crack your singer around the back of the head. And there is a theory that that big chunk of wood on the end of a headed bass is detrimental to the sound. It can set up sympathetic resonances within the neck. You know, that big chunk of wood vibrates, so it sets up resonances down the neck, which can cause dead spots, wolf notes, that kind of thing. And again, on a headless bass, you just don't get these. I mean, part of the issue is that these basses, all three of these you see here, are carbon necked as well, which also means you don't get dead spots. But I do subscribe to that you know, the lack of a head does help with the consistency of the notes on the neck. So, you know, those are my reasons. Everybody has their own thoughts on these things, but I like carbon fiber. I like headless basses. They work for me, you know. And you can fit it in a guitar gig bag. You don't need a whacking great big bass gig bag. And you can usually fit it in an overhead compartment on an aeroplane where, you know, a big jazz bass, you can't.
That's a big one.
So there you go, lots of reasons.
Yeah, I didn't know about the headstock and the frequencies. Or let's put it that way.
It's a debated subject, but then so is the issue of tone woods.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure about tone woods personally, but you know, actually Stefan, who built this bass, does believe in tone woods. So, you know, each to their own. It's fair enough.
Okay, thank you so much. I really enjoyed listening to those tunes. And funny coincidence, the first song that I'm gonna play is kind of based around the same concept. Why you picked Nightingale at what park was it?
Berkeley Square.
Barking
Yeah.
Square. Yeah. It's a tune that I usually do a little game around when I play it live. I ask the audience, okay, who can tell me which song that is? And then if they know, usually they know the title, but most people don't know who wrote it. So that's the bigger question. Put it in the chat. Who wrote this song? All right, you can take a little break, take a sip of drink, and I'm going to take it from here for a bit. See you in a minute, Carl.
See you in a bit.
All right, bass lovers. One more time for the people on Facebook. If you want to join the discussion in the chat or even after the show, you can always hop on over to Crowdcast. It's not too late yet. The link should be up there in the post description. And it's totally free. You just need an email address to register. And as I said, there's going to be some fun giveaways. Also, I just put up a poll. Are you a bass player or are you not? That would be very interesting. Oh yeah, you should press the bars on the bottom of the chat window next to the question mark. That's where the polls are. Because we would really like to know how many of you are bass players. Because let me tell you a little bit more about my mission. So my mission is to put bass in the spotlight because I sincerely believe that bass can save the planet, or at least maybe not save the planet, but let's be honest, make it a better place. Because let me just point out a couple of things that come with playing the bass. Bassists are in a band because they're there to lay the foundation for all the other band members to build upon. So bass players are the guys that serve first, and that's already their purpose, to serve. So even if you don't play bass, if you just go through life with that mindset of serve first, how beautiful of a world could we create, right? So I'm really trying to get, even if you're not a bass player, you to think like a bass player, become an AmBASSador. So I'm gonna get into the topic a little bit deeper in a bit, but now for some music. Let me know if you recognize the tune and if you know the composer. And now I'm totally doubting myself with this non-headless bass and thinking, oh my god, the frequencies, what have I done? Let me know if you can hear any dead notes. Okay, mic off. So no, no, we've got some cracking over here, some interference. I hope you don't hear it. It should just be my speakers. So let me know in the chat if you can hear crackling. Then we'll have to figure out what it is. But I think we can just ignore it. Seems to be fine now. So yeah, any answers in the chat, Julia? I can't read it from here. Michael Jackson. Yes, that's the performer. But is it the composer? I'm afraid it isn't. So whoever guesses the composer gets a little prize. This is not the main giveaway yet, but I'll send you a little prize as well. First one to write the composer. We'll go through the chat and figure that one out after the fact. Okay, so I can see there is a question, but I'm just gonna finish up my first set and then we get to questions because they might be for Carl as well. Oh, it's a question about my bass. Don't I play my Marushchik anymore? Well, That is an interesting question because this is actually my Marushchik, the mother of all Sputnik basses. And I practically only play the bass. I use that one there, the mayonnaise, for teaching because most students don't play C string, but some of my students have a 5 string and then they have a low B string. This one is a 5 string as well, but as you heard Carl talking about the limitations of a 4 string, which he enjoys the challenge of, I didn't enjoy it that much. But 6 string was always too much for my short little fingers to handle. So I decided after having that, oh, it's really fucked up, do mirror movements. Well, I strung that bass up with the C string. I really liked it, but it was just a bit too long, and I basically asked a couple of bass builders to build me my dream bass. I really know exactly what I wanted. Every millimeter on this bass is laid out and designed by myself. And Adrian Marushchik was the only one who said, yeah, sure, why not? No problem at all. So he did it. It took about half a year because it was a first, but that model took off for him. So I'm really happy that I have my dream bass, and I think he's quite happy that I kind of gave this idea to him as a little present. And he's selling quite a few of these basses, and he's making such beautiful copies of them. Each time he's posting another one, I'm like, oh, I kind of want to buy it. Although I already have one, but this one, oh my God, look at it. It looks so good. So maybe one day, what I really dream is buying a second one of these as a fretless. So, talking about that, if you enjoy this show, you have 2 options to pay your contributions. I truly believe that music should be accessible for free, especially for the financially needy, because they need mental, psychological healing the most and can't afford expensive therapists. So music is my therapist, and I think it needs to be shared among everyone for free, and all income of artists should be contribution based. I'm sure there's enough people out there that have the means and the bank account to afford supporting art and see how important it is for society. So I'm not worried about giving stuff away for free. You can just either use the PayPal button or there's another one down there. Julia, maybe you can click on it. That's the donate button. No, not on your iPad, up there. And that's a different system, but after the last jam, push that button there and it should pop up in the chat. So it seemed that donate button from Crowdcast seemed a bit complicated, so I just thought, let's go easy on you. Most of you have a PayPal account, and here's my link. So, but reminder from the live audience here in the room. Those donations actually help me finance this whole thing, because I do have to pay for Crowdcast for this whole service, keep it running and inviting people, and sure as hell I would like to pay all of my guests a guaranteed amount of money. What do you call it? Well, you get the drift. Less talking, Mischa, more playing. Next song. Okay, this one's one of my original compositions. It's called In Memory Of. And as I'm a big reggae fan, I like to listen to a lot of music whose composers and performers are not with us anymore. And yeah, so this is dedicated to all my reggae heroes, from Bob Marley to Gregory Isaacs, Freddie McGregor, and too many to name them all. Enjoy a reggae vibe. I'm going to change the camera now so you can see what I'm doing with my feet. This one's got some looping going. Microphone out, music on. Ooh, all right. I enjoyed that one. And I hope you did too. Hello, camera. Let me take a breath. Some good vibrations. Somebody guessed whether the composer. Okay, yeah, we'll get back to that one. We'll get back to you. Someone might have known the answer. Always very excited about my music geeks. All right, but let's move on. Little reminder for my Facebook people. I really appreciate you being there on Facebook. If you want to take part in the discussion, in the giveaway, ask some questions, come and hop over to Crowdcast. Registration is completely free. Just as streaming it on Facebook. Get a bit of extra quality and extra quality time with us. Wouldn't that be nice? Okay, so last song of the first set is another original. And this one is kind of coincidentally connected to classical music. Karl played in his etude as a second song, and this one's called Sonatine, which is really, the title is inspired by a Japanese gangster movie by Takeshi Kitano. But then later on I thought, well, if you name a song that by that title, you better know what it means. And I put it in Google, and what does Wikipedia say? Oh, it's just a tiny, cute little sonate. So it's basically a perfect fit to this song. I hope you enjoy it. Here we go. All right, and we're back. So I hope you enjoyed that one. I can't really read the comments from here. All good, all good. That's very encouraging, Julia. Thank you. All good, all good. No complaints. Just do your thing. Okay, thank you. That's much more humbling. All right, Carl. So, is there any other questions, or was that Marustic one? Was that the only one in the question box? Because other than that, I have a couple of. Oh, okay, Carl. Do you want to lead with an answer to this question? String brand and gauge.
Strings and gauge. Okay. Yeah, I'll go with mine for now, if you like. What I have on this are some brand new strings, well, new to me, that Bogart are now making. For a long time, I used to use Status hot wires, obviously made by the guys who make Status basses over in the UK. Because I tend to use double ball end strings, they obviously have a good stock of them because they make a lot of headless basses. But I don't know. In recent years, I've kind of found them a little bit too bright, a little bit harsh, and I wanted to try a few other things. And Stefan at Bogart was kind enough to say he would have a go at sourcing some strings because he wanted to offer some strings of his own along with his basses. And he came up with these. Perfect for me. They're a little mellower than Status hot wires, which suits me nicely at the moment. But nice and bright.
Which metal are they? Nickel, steel?
They're actually a kind of 50-50. They're kind of in between nickel and steel. So not as mellow as nickels, because I don't like nickels, pure nickels. Yeah. So they're kind of in between, which is interesting. And I use very light gauge, again, because I came from the classical guitar. Really thick strings don't suit me at all. So these are really light. They're, what are they, 90, 70, 50 and 30.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's mine.
Wow.
How about you? What do you use?
That's very interesting. So I use quite thin strings too. And I also use strings from the same maker as my bass. When I had Adrian build this bass for me, I didn't even go that far thinking about what strings I'm gonna put on. I was just gonna, worry about that one when the bass is in my hand. I was like, you know what? I think I have a good idea. Why don't you try these ones? And you just put a set on that was 100, 80, 60, 40, and then the C string 30. So the ratio from the 4 lower strings to the C string is quite unusual, because usually you get quite thin C strings, and that's what always bothered me about most 6 strings, that the C string just sounded disconnected like another instrument almost. But somehow with this 40 to 30 step between G and C string, I'm really happy. And for me it's actually similar to what you said. I used to play nickels, but they were a bit too mellow for me, and I've got really aggressive, sweaty hands. So my strings, their brightness just is done in a couple of days when I really play a lot. And steel strings just last a little bit longer and are brighter to begin with. So I kind of recently, about half a year ago, changed to steel strings and kept them up for now. Really happy with that. So yeah, Maruschik is the brand, and Karl's are Bogart, right?
That's right.
Does Bogart also make single ball ended strings, or?
Yeah, of course. I
Yeah.
mean, he makes headed basses if you want.
Yeah.
He's not exclusively headless
It
basses.
might
So
be his
of
niche of
course, yeah.
strings, though. You never know.
But he of course he does make strings for headed basses as well, because he makes his own headed basses. So.
Okay, so there's another question for you, Karl.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever considered using more than 4 strings as a guitar player coming from the 6-string guitar? That's a good question, actually.
It is a good question, and actually lots of people ask me that one. And I think actually you touched on the answer earlier, that I actually enjoy the limitation of 4. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It forces you to think in a different way. I mean, first of all, I just like the physicality of it, the space of having 4 strings. I've had 5-string guitars in the past, but I do find that the string spacing is just that little bit too narrow for me. I just never quite get on with it. And again, if you play classical guitar, the string spacing is wide. A classical guitar has got a big wide neck on it, so that's what I'm used to. So 5-string basses just feel a bit cramped to me. But as I say, I like that limitation. It forces you to think in creative ways, and for me, I kind of need that. I've kind of gone halfway in that I have a piccolo bass as well, which is tuned exactly an octave higher than this. So it's effectively like the bottom 4 strings of a guitar. So that's a nice kind of compromise when I need those really high parts, like guitar parts. But again, it's only 4 strings.
You use that one on quite a few of your YouTube clips where you have 2 basses going generally, huh?
Yeah, that's right. Where I compose something for multiple basses, it's nice to have a different voice in there. And a piccolo bass has a tone very much its own. It doesn't quite sound like a guitar. It's got more mellowness and roundness to it. It obviously still feels and plays like a bass. So it's just nice to have a different voice. And actually, in the last month or so, I got another of those. What I was using as a piccolo bass is a Chowney short scale bass, and I bought another one specifically to tune as a tenor, which is in between the two. That would be A, D, G, C. So it's not as high pitched as the piccolo. You could actually play a bass gig on a tenor bass if you were careful. But again, it's got a different tone, it's got a different voice, and it's just nice as a bass player, well, as a composer who is only using basses, to have several different voices of bass, if you see what I mean. So I like experimenting with these tunings anyway. But they're all, as I say, they're all 4 strings, just because that feels like home to me.
Do you ever work with different tunings?
Uh, Not well. I mean, I suppose the tenor bass is a different
No, I
tune
mean
than
other
the
than
bottom string
fourths
and neck. But
or fifth.
no.
Oh,
There are a few pieces where I detuned the bottom string to an E flat or a D,
okay.
but I only ever do that temporarily just for one song.
Yeah.
It's not something that feels natural to me. And I mean, the other thing is that with what I do, I mean, obviously I do these arrangements for YouTube, but I also make the transcriptions available via my Patreon site, and I want those transcriptions to be playable. I
Yeah.
want your average bassist to be able to look at those translations, those transcriptions, and think, yeah, actually I can do that. I don't need any special techniques. I don't need any particular special knowledge of tunings or anything like that. I want these things to be playable on a regular bass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Without crazy tunings
Okay.
where
So
possible.
your transcriptions are
Just so that they're accessible to
yeah.
everybody. I don't think solo bass should be this thing that only special people do. I think any bass player can do it, and that's what my Patreon page is about. Really, is making this stuff accessible to everybody.
I just had to change screens to put your Patreon link in there, but then you stopped talking, so now
Very nice. Thanks
people
for
had
that.
to read very quickly. We'll put it in the chat in a minute. We don't have it ready here yet. I don't know. I forgot about that one. But can people get to your Patreon from your website as well? Is it linked somehow?
Yeah, there's a link there on one of those pages. I'm
Okay.
not too familiar with
Yeah.
my web page myself, but it's on there somewhere.
Okay.
But you can just go to Patreon and type in Karl
Yeah.
Clews. You'll find me somewhere in there. Yeah.
Okay. So if you want to play some solo bass and you don't want to write your own songs, follow Karl Clews on Patreon. There you go. If there's no further questions from the audience, I've got a question for you that I'm very interested in, because one thing that I had planned when, I don't know if you studied music, I studied music at a music college, and whilst studying, I was still thinking of myself as a session player 100%, and I wanted to become wildly successful with that, tour the world at least 6 months of the year. And to some degree, just having a kid changed that. I just wanted to be at home and around my family more than being out in the world. But then also some experiences with bands and jobs that I had kind of pushed me more and more to do my own thing. And I really would like to know how you got into solo bass. Was it kind of turning away from the session musician, or more of a side gig, or your hobby? What would you call it? How did you get inspired to go solo?
I think I kind of touched on it in the first half a little bit. That coming from a classical guitar background, when I picked up a bass, I didn't really know any different. I didn't know that you're just supposed to. Well, I say supposed. You're just supposed to play root notes and be effectively monophonic. Because on a classical guitar, I think is a wonderful instrument. I mean, the great composer and player Andrei Segovia once referred to it as an orchestra in a single instrument, and he's right that if you're playing a good classical guitar piece, you're playing a bass line, you're playing harmonies, you're playing counter melodies, and you're playing the melody all at the same time. Through finger picking technique and so on. But so when I picked up a bass, because it kind of feels like a guitar, I just assumed you could do that. You could do the same thing. And so I just started doing that. And it was only a few years into playing and, noodling between songs on stage that people started saying, well, hang on, what are you doing there? People don't do that on the bass. that's wrong, surely.
Well, they
And I still get it
yeah,
today on YouTube, and I'm sure you do as
yeah
well.
they went
With
easy
people
on
say
you.
that.
I have a similar experience, but it was right away from the get-go where I first touched the bass. This bass here on yeah, that yellow
Right.
Telecaster that's
Yeah.
modeled into a precision bass. I actually got that handed down from the original bass player from the Scorpions. And
Wow.
the deal was this. I have a blog post about that is called I Was Tricked into Playing Bass. Because when I started out, I wanted to become the next Kurt Cobain. So I'm a 90s kid, and Kurt Cobain was my hero. So Kurt played the guitar and he sang. And so I wanted to do the same. But I met two brothers in the neighborhood. One of them played guitar, the other one played drums. The classical thing is like, well, I'm better at guitar playing. Why don't you play bass? I'm like, okay, I guess. Like 2 strings less. I feel a bit put down in my place, but I guess I can handle it. So I got this bass, and the first thing I did was, oh, well, I'm not going to grab it now, but I grabbed it, and I knew this one song from Green Day with power chords, so I played power chords, and I already know a song. And then right away, the guy who gave the bass to me was like, no, wait. You don't play chords on bass. You only play single notes. And that was such a letdown. I was like, what? 2 strings less, and I'm only allowed to play 1 note at a time? How am I going to be a revolutionary artist, inspiring the world, doing so little? So, but I had an awesome first teacher who kind of showed me that it is okay to do a little bit more on bass. And later on, during studying, I actually fell in love with playing as little as possible on the bass. So now that's how I got to looping, actually, because when I loop, I can still play a bass part how it's meant to be, as a bass line, as the foundation of the song. And then I can still noodle on top or play some chords and kind of mix it all up. And that reminds me of one particular thing of my mission. Did you notice? I only figured that out a couple of weeks ago. Did you notice that the bass is the only melody instrument in the rhythm section? The bassist literally plays melodies all the time. Of course, the pianist can play melodies, the guitarist can play melodies, but in general they play chords. And the drummer generally plays drums. And I thought that's pretty cool. Like, well, if any of these guys, we are entitled to play melodies and go solo. You go and stick with your rhythms and chords. I thought that was quite funny. And I had something else on my mind that just slipped now. The mission. So, yeah, just the fact that bass players. Oh no, wait, sorry. It's actually not the mission. It's I'm starting babbling now, but let me finish this train of thought. So, in reggae, a lot of times the bass line defines the song. If you listen to a tune like "Stir It Up," you hear the bass line, you right away know, oh, it's that tune. Whereas in a lot of pop and rock songs, just listening to the bass line, a lot of times you wouldn't recognize the song. It's just root nodes of a chord structure that is in a million other songs exactly the same way. But whereas in reggae, you really have the bass playing melody. And I won't get into reggae too deep now. I'm really geeky about that stuff, about rhythms and how they're used and reused, and it's all cool with them. They've got a different approach to copyrights. But yeah, just ding, 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 ding. You know the song. If you hear the guitar or the drums, you have no idea which song they're playing. The bass tells you what song it is in reggae. So I'm done with my reggae song, so maybe I should have said that before the reggae song. Shall we have some more music? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, if you have to.
Crack on.
Okay, I'll leave the stage to you, my friend. Give them hell.
All right, see what we can do. All right, we're back on. Okay, with this one, let me think. This one is going to be another one that I wrote. This is going to be on my next original album, which is due probably in the next few weeks. I'm just mastering and sequencing it now. This is the title track from my second album. This is called Navigator. Now, just a little bit of background on this, that I only recently discovered a player called Alain Caron. I think he's Canadian, is he? French-Canadian? A brilliant player. If you haven't heard him, go check him out on YouTube. Anyway, I definitely recommend him. And what fascinated me was the way he was using slap to play melodies. Now, usually slap is kind of limited because it's a kind of linear motion. There are only certain notes you can hit with that pull. And that pull is on the top strings. That's where your melody is going to be generally. And Alain Caron was using this wonderful technique where he uses more than just one finger. He uses a couple of fingers here to do those pulls, so he can get those in-between beats that happen between that linear motion, if you see what I mean. So it made his playing of melodies using the slap technique much more fluid and much more versatile than I'd ever heard before. So I started experimenting a bit with this, and I use it on quite a lot of my stuff now. But what also came out of it was I just kind of stumbled across a technique which I hadn't really heard anybody else doing. Perhaps Stu Ham did something similar, but I realised that by using a couple of fingers to do the pull, you can get this. You can get a kind of chordal effect when you're playing slap. And if you coordinate it nicely, you get this lovely cascading effect of notes. So this is a technique I've been exploring a bit on this second album. There's 3 or 4 songs using that technique, and I'm still in the early stages of discovering what it's about, which is why this piece of music I decided to call it Navigator. So I'll give it a go, see how it sounds here. The difficulty with this is trying not to play it too fast. I'm always reminded of Louis Johnson from Brothers Johnson and multiple recordings with. He was the bass player for Michael Jackson for most of his life. Brilliant slap player, but towards the end of his career, he used to take to wearing these gloves with lead weights in them. And he said it was because he naturally played too fast. So he had to weight his hands down so he would play a little bit slower. And I used to think this was ridiculous, but now I'm thinking maybe he had a point. But anyway, here we go. I'll see how we get on with this. killer.
Woohoo!
Kind of have to be warmed up for that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should have left that to the end of the set, but anyway, it's all right. You get the impression anyway.
No,
you get
I
the
thought
idea.
it was really good.
So, what shall I play next? Yeah, the next one I think, this is not one I wrote myself. This, a little bit of background on this. One of my big bass playing heroes and influences is Stanley Clarke. I grew up, as I say, in the 80s listening to Mark King, and one of his heroes, I remember him saying he loved this guy called Stanley Clarke, so I thought, oh, I'd better check out Stanley Clarke. So I went to the record shop, and well, there are a few Stanley Clarke records I saw, but the one jumped out at me because it had this wonderful picture of a fantastic looking bass on the front. Turned out to be an alembic, so Stanley is famous for his alembics, and it was the album If This Bass Could Only Talk. Still, I listen to it every other day. Fantastic album. And there was one track on there that really stood out to me, and it was apparently it was originally written by Charles Mingus, and then Stanley adapted it, kind of developed it a little bit, did his own version of it, which actually sounds very different to Mingus's original. So this is my solo bass version of Stanley Clarke's adaptation of Charles Mingus's tune, Goodbye Pork Pie Hat. I think Stanley Clarke on that album dedicated it to Jaco Pastorius, who recently passed away. This was back in '87, I think that album came out, around about then. And I like to dedicate this to a friend of mine, a wonderful Polish keyboard player who passed away a couple of years ago now, far too early, a guy called Marcin Plaza. So this is my version of Goodbye Pork Pie Hat. I may throw in a little bit of Beatles somewhere along the line as well. So again, I'd just like to say, if you want the tabs for that or the sheet music, I always, on my Patreon page, I write this stuff out in both standard notation and tab. So whatever you find easier. That one's up there, as is Pink Panther that I played earlier, and there are hundreds up there now. So take your choice. If you sign up for as little as €1 a month, I think it is, maybe €2 a month, you get access to the whole lot. So worst case scenario for me, you can sign up for 1 month, pay €2 and get 100 transcriptions. That's perfectly fine. you can then unsubscribe, and that's it. But if you want to show a little bit of ongoing support for what I do, I'd love it if you could sign up, drop in, drop out, whatever. It would be great to see you there. Anyway, that's enough self-promotion. I'm going to finish up now with another tune from Dissident, my debut album there. As I said, that's on Bandcamp, it's on Spotify, but I hate Spotify. Let's keep that quiet. Apple, iTunes, etc. Anywhere you get your music from, it's there. So this is a piece, a little bit of background on this one. Yeah, we'll go deep on this one. Basically, I would warn anybody who wants to get into this solo bass thing that there's a little pushback. There's a little resistance to it. There's a lot of players and people out there who will tell you that's not how you play the bass. You don't do that. And they also like to put you in a box. People like to put you in a box. If they see you on YouTube doing solo bass stuff, there's a certain assumption that that's all you can do, which absolutely is not true. It's just that interesting stuff that's a little out of the ordinary is how you get views on YouTube, unfortunately. So people are more likely to put up that solo bass stuff because it's a little bit different. More likely to do that than put up just a video of them plodding through root notes. But yeah, people often assume that solo bassists can't do the regular bass player job, which is rubbish. I mean, there are guys like Marcus Miller, Victor Wooten, all do the solo bass thing, and they are fantastic accompanists, support players as well. And you'll find that's the case for pretty much any solo bass player out there. They can do the job of a bass player too. It's just they feel driven to do this in their spare time, and actually, I think as you study solo bass, what you'll find is that you become a better accompanist. When you learn to put tunes with your bass lines and play the two at the same time, you get a greater insight into how a bass line or getting too busy with a bass line can detract from a melody line. Because that is the worst thing in an accompanying bass player, in a band. When you hear him going off on up the dusty end of the neck, and he's not doing the job of holding the rhythm down, and he's pulling focus from the singer or the guitarist or whoever is supposed to be in the spotlight at that point. As I say, if you're studying solo bass yourself, you become aware of how what you do at the bottom end can detract from what's going on at the top end. You get a better picture, a better overall picture. So, my argument is that a lot of those solo bass players are actually the guys you want in a band. They understand that you can't do all that fancy top end stuff in a band situation. You just can't, and that's just the way of the world. They can do it if they need to, but they find another outlet for that stuff. They're well aware of what they need to do as a bass player in a band. So this particular piece came about because from years of playing with bands, you come up with these little riffs, little things you think sound fantastic, but you know where to put them. You can't put them in other people's songs. there's just too much going on. So this piece really was just a whole bunch of riffs that I'd come up with over the years, all jammed together in one song. It's just a way for me to get all this stuff out. And it's my own song, it's my own bass composition. So, all those riffs aren't getting anybody else's way. This was therapy for me. Now this is a song called Switchblade, because it's short and nasty. Although it might not be quite so short tonight. I tend to use this one to finish off sets with. So there's a bit of a section in the middle where I improvise a bit, and I may throw in a few things you recognise, depending on how the spirit takes me. So, as I said, yes, Switchblade. And another funny story, just before I play it, I said, I have my reasons for calling it Switchblade. When I was playing this one night, my daughter walked into the room and asked me, what's that song called? And I said, it's called Switchblade. And she said, what's a switchblade? And I said, well, it's a little knife, a pointy little knife. And she said, oh, so you've called the song Switchblade because when it goes into your ear, it's really painful. So, out of the mouths of babes. Here we go. Let's see how this one goes.
Whoa.
Right,
Woo,
that's it.
woo, woo. Okay, first thing I have to
Thank
say,
you.
you are made for this, Carl. You're a natural streamer. You really know how to
It doesn't
entertain an
feel that.
audience. I love it.
I'm quaking inside. Honestly, I find this so much more nerve-wracking than playing to stadiums.
Yeah, yeah.
This is just weird. It's like being in a goldfish bowl.
Shh.
But
Don't tell anyone.
I
They don't notice. It looks so natural, especially when you're talking and when you're playing. Like right now, in particular, I could see that Karl Clews that I know from YouTube with that typical dance move that you do. Really love it, man.
oh, yeah. Well, thank you.
And the whole staying alive.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was another big hit.
Okay, so what do you say to my wardrobe change?
Very nice, very nice. I want one.
All you need, bass.
Where can you
Oh
buy
wait,
it?
look,
Is the question.
I even have an all you need, bass. Just for jokes. Okay. So here's the thing. If you want to become an ambassador and contribute and support my mission, bass, putting bass in the spotlight and making this earth a nicer place to live on, you can do so by donating right here, or you can go to my shop. I just released a couple of shirts that I've been working on with my email list that helped me pick the right designs. We've got 2 winners, AmBASSador and All You Need Is Bass. We've got a hoodie as well, and oh yeah, check out the link below. There should be a link appearing on the screen. That sends you right to my shop where you can look at all the t-shirt designs and pick the one that you like the most to support my mission. So, also, for signing up to Crowdcast, I promised you a little surprise. It's my birthday and I like giving gifts, so I've got a little discount code for you guys. 15% off, but it's only value until tomorrow, 11:30. So you gotta take action or you gotta pay more. That's just how the game is played. And of course, if you're on Facebook, last chance to hop in onto Crowdcast to join us here. Ask us the last couple of questions. What? Oh, yeah, the code is in the chat. So, take that. Julia wrote it, just in case you wonder who that mysterious Julia is and what she all knows about Carl and me. So, I guess I'm gonna have to do my final set now. I get to. I love it. Okay, next song is one of the songs that had the most revisions of. I think it is the song that had the most revisions of all. I think the bass line stayed the same, but everything else changed at least 10 times until I had it to this album version. And that's why it's not just called Reborn, it's called Reborn Again. Because I buried that song and then I dug it up again and I refined it and I buried it again because I didn't like it and worked until I needed one more song to finish my album and I just had to make it work. And I do like it now. So here we go, Reborn Again. Oh yeah, and if you want to support us via PayPal, that's always welcome. Enjoy Reborn Again, Neo Soul Solo Bass. All right. I hope you enjoyed that one. One of my oldest compositions and yet latest compositions at the same time. Isn't that ironic? So, the next song, I was really back and forth of whether I was going to play it today or not, because it's kind of a very serious song, not really a birthday song in that sense. It's my birthday, let me work it. It's my birthday. Woo! Woo! Balloon party! So, however, I decided to play it because it is about death, and in some ways, birth and death are very connected. There's this lovely saying that what happens in your life is what happens between. It's like the alphabet. It's what happens in between B and D is C. Birth, death, and C is the choices we make. I want you to make the choice to think like a bass player and support my mission. And go out, serve others, support others around you, and be humbled by just doing your part in society and find joy in helping others. So, my next song, I actually arranged it when a very good friend of mine passed away. So, I'm just going to play it. I hope you enjoy it. Whew. I hope you like that one and can relate to it. Well, I didn't really mean to make everyone sob now. So the point I'm trying to make is that if we think about death and confront ourselves with the thought that we are actually dieable, maybe we can celebrate every day of life and not just birthdays. Yeah, that's my take on that. I'm not going to go deeper, otherwise I'm going to start crying. So, last song of the day. I'm going back to my reggae roots. And this, I'm not going to tell you where this is from, and I'm going to do some little experimentation as I like to do in the end of the show. Let's see where I'm taking it. Okay, who knows this tune? Sing along. Are you ready to stand up and fight for revolution? Are you ready to stand up and fight? Are you ready to stand up and fight for mission-based solution? Are you ready to stand up and fight? Mission base is the key, laying foundation for everyone to breathe. Without base there is no foundation. Without base no celebration. That's right! Come and stand up and fight for revolution. Come and stand up and fight for solution. Bass is the answer to the key. Bass is the answer. Come sing with me. Everyone knows that bass is what it knows. Bass makes you shake your booty and bass makes you grow. Bass is the answer. Bass is the key to raise a happy family. Come and stand up and fight. It's revolution time. Come and stand up and fight. Sing with me. Can't you stand up and fight for revolution? Come stand up and fight. Find a solution. Bass is the key to live in harmony. Bass is the answer to be free. Because without bass there is no foundation. Without bass no cause for celebration. Without bass no foundation. Without bass no cause for celebration. Can you hear that without bass? You don't know your place. Can you hear without bass? You don't have some faith. Don't put that face. Play bass. Light up the place. Jump. Without bass there is no foundation. Without bass no cause for celebration. Without bass there's no love in this place, yeah. Without bass you don't know your place. One more time, sing with me. One more time, celebrate with me. Boom! Without bass, there is no foundation. Without bass, no cause for celebration. Without bass, you don't know your place, no, no, no. Without bass, everyone's putting a sad face. All right, people. That's it, music-wise, for today. Let's bring Karl back up. And yeah, last chance. Any questions from the audience? Otherwise, we're gonna enter the giveaway phase. There are questions. Okay, good. I like questions. That's not a bass. Oh. Okay. Karl, do you wanna? Is that from? Okay.
What's that, sorry?
Well, I guess we can either way both answer. Do you want to go first, Karl?
Which question are we looking at?
Have you ever played a Chapman stick?
A Chapman stick? I would love to. No, I haven't. But again, lots of people have said, given the kind of thing that I do, I should explore it. So, yes, they're terribly expensive though, aren't they? And I'd imagine it costs a lot to replace all those strings, but I'm fascinated by them. I love Tony Levin's work on a Chapman stick. And is it Nick Beggs, back in the 80s, used to play one of those? Amazing sound, but no, I've never played one. How about you?
I have never. And to be honest, it also never crossed my mind. I guess everyone has their own idea of pureness. You're sticking to the 4 strings. With me, when I look at a Chapman stick, I'm just thinking, it's not really a bass, is it? It's more like a harp, but you tap it instead of playing it. The closest thing to a Chapman stick that I would really like to try is those, what are they called? They're not called harps. You know these huge Chinese string instruments? You always see them in the Kung Fu movies. I don't know if you watch any Kung Fu movies. Also, the soundtracks are bow, down, down. There's really thick strings, lots of timbre. I'd love to own one of those or just try it out for once. In GarageBand, they have some nice simulations of it. It's already quite satisfying, but having that real thing, that huge big thing in front of you with a little reverb, that'd be awesome. For me, Chapman stick, not so much. I'm happy with my 5 strings. That's all I can handle. Already 6 strings is way too much for me. Look at my hands. How many fingers? How many fingers? It's 5. I can't mute more than 5 strings. With the 6th string, I always have a rumble, and I'm really impressed at the people that can play six string super clean, like Josh Cohen, Steve Bailey, and the likes. So yeah, I would definitely try it if somebody would just hand it to me, but not on my priority list. Is there more questions? Why do you play solo? We kind of talked about it. Well, I guess Carl talked more about it than I did. To me, on the one hand, it was the family. I wanted to stay home and not be a busy session musician. I also fell in love with basically. There's one thing that my teacher in college told me that kind of really clicked with me. He said, "You know, Mischa, I don't think of myself as a bass player. I think of myself as a musician who's really good at playing bass." And I thought, like, yeah, that's really it. And once I kind of listened to music that way and started playing music from that mindset, it's kind of what you were talking about, that if you play solo bass, you understand the big picture of what you're doing as a bassist in a band. And you know what works, what doesn't work. And you also really start appreciating the simple bass parts and make them just feel really nice instead of being embarrassed that you only play the root note. Oh, the guitarist is playing so many notes. I must be looking like a dick on stage, like I can't play more than 4 strings and 2 notes on it. So the challenge is definitely a big motivation, and the other thing is the independence. I've had my fair share of session jobs being very promising and then taken away the day after, and you're set to start all over again. And that's one thing that you have when you play solo. You don't have to start over again when a bandmate quits or the band gets into an argument so bad that no one talks to each other again. I mean, if you have multiple personalities, you might do that as well, but thank God I don't. And apart from that, I don't know. Do you have any other motivation to play solo?
Again, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there with the independence, the independent aspect of it. I don't like having to wait for other people. You know, you can be, when you're recording a song, and you have to send it off and wait for the drummer to do his thing, and then send it off to somebody else and wait for the guitarist to do his thing. I'm just sitting at home twiddling my thumbs, and I'm already on to the next thing. And I just love being able to finish it myself.
Yes. Yes.
Being able to finish a piece of music, and this, when you're making solo bass arrangements, it's just so nice. Again, coming from the classical guitar, where you're used to playing something that feels like a finished piece of music, a complete piece of music. When you come to the bass and you play it traditionally, all you've got is a bass line. Okay, it may be a melody, but it's just a bass line. There's no harmony. There's no, there's no interaction there. So I just love that, being able to play something that sounds like a complete finished piece of music without having to rely on bandmates. And it's perfect for this lockdown situation when you can't get together with bandmates anyway. So bass players who don't play solo bass, I feel a little sorry for them, sitting at home just chugging along on bass lines. There's a beauty in that simplicity, but sometimes you just want to do a bit more. You want a piece of music, you want to be able to play something that feels complete, and that's what solo bass is for me.
Yeah, and on like the other side of being independent is, and that's actually something that I struggled with to some extent making my first album, which you can get on my shop. Mm-hmm. Um, the interaction between musicians, it can be very fruitful. Where you're like, oh, I'm stuck. I don't know where the song's supposed to go. Here, what's your idea? And that can be loads of fun. And that's why, for example, on my CD, I collaborated with 3 other bassists. I only wanted bass on that album, so it had to be bassists. But yeah, out of 11 songs, 3 needed collaborations to be completed, because only being independent, you run risk to run against the wall and just not find a way through it. And that's why I really appreciate you being here, and Josh 2 months ago, and Juan next month, and then we have Lynn, and then we have Nick Shangelis, and Tommy Lee Depp is coming up, and a couple of other guys and girls. I'm really looking forward to that. So, as you see, it's this is really close to feedback, my mic here. It's really all about the mission base, pushing base and making the space making the space a better place, making this planet a better place with bass. And not just as a solo instrument, although we're focusing on solo bass in this show, but we might even have some session players come up in the far future. First, we gotta get all those solo bass players from around the world. As I said, next month, if it works out, hopefully, we've got a guy from Spain showing us flamenco slap. Then after that, from Japan, singing and playing at the same time. I'm really just starting out with it, quite uncomfortable with it actually, but you gotta do what you gotta do if you want to grow. Okay, people, I really, really appreciate you being here. Let's get to the giveaway. Okay, I'm gonna put a countdown for 1 minute, and everyone here on Crowdcast can put his 5 favorite bands in the chat. And what you need to win is give me the bass player's name of these 5 bands with it. 1 minute and go. So I'm getting feedback. Half a minute to go. Let's see. It's a shame we can't see if anyone's typing. I like that about WhatsApp. You can see, they're busy. They're almost there. You would just have to wait until the last second. 15 seconds. Do we have to extend? Are we not going to have a winner? Oh, by the way, the prize is this shirt and some freebie downloads from Carl's and my music. Okay, the minute's over. Okay, so do you agree that mission bass is very necessary? Bass is still underappreciated. We're gonna simplify this whole thing and do a second round because I want to have a winner. I want someone to have a shirt. Okay, name 2 of your favorite bands and the name of the bass players. Go. In the chat. We have a winner. Okay, can you read that out one more time? Metallica Cliff. Strictly bass, Mischa. That's a good one. Okay, yeah, the real answer was Metallica, Cliff Burton, and Motorhead, Lemmy Kilmister. But yeah, I am. I have affirmation that what I'm doing here is important. What we are doing here, Carl, is important. We have to put bass into the spotlight, so this poor show of bass knowledge doesn't happen again on this show. Homework for next month: find the names of the bass players of your 5 favorite bands, and that's the first thing I want to see in the chat next month. There's another answer there. John Mayer. Oh, John Mayall. Yeah, there's 3 names. John Mayall, as far as I know, is a guitar player. Are the other 2 bass players? Larry Taylor. Yeah. And Stephen Thompson. See, now I need to get embarrassed because I only know John Mayall, the guitar player.
Me too. I don't know those names. That looks really bad, doesn't it, when we don't know?
Okay, good. So that's homework for Carl and me. We're gonna research. What was it?
John Mayall's bass player.
John Mayall's bass players. Larry Taylor and Stephen Thompson. But they're kind of the John Smith kind of names. Maybe that's why we can't identify them. Anyhow, everyone, thank you so much for being part of this episode. I kind of had a discussion planned, but I think we're going to skip it because we've already overstepped the time limit by far, and all questions have been answered. Feel free to rewatch at any time. Even the Facebook crowd, you can still sign up to Crowdcast after the fact and rewatch, because we're going to take it off of Facebook as soon as this live stream is over. One more reminder, in the chat you'll find the discount code. We're going to paste it one more time for the Mission Bass t-shirts. We've got All You Need Bass and AmBASSador, putting bass into the spotlight. And we even got a hoodie with All You Need Bass. They come in black, navy blue, red and white. And just look at the shop. Links in the comment as well, or on the... Just hit that call to action button one more time, Julia. And yeah, Carl, thank you so much. I truly think
Thank you.
You should do this on a regular basis on your own, because you are made for this. You're so entertaining to watch. You've got a lot of interesting stuff to say. I kind of start to babble on and on, but you're actually making sense. So I really appreciate you being here and taking the time to do the sound check and everything. So
thanks ever so much for having me. I mean, you have certainly inspired me to try a little bit of this off my own bat. You know, I have great admiration for the fact that you go live every week doing your little jams, and you know, it is inspiring. And in this particular climate, we kind of have to do this. Yeah. You know, with no live gigs, we need some creative output. And you know, I was nervous about this kind of setup, but you've reassured me and inspired me to give it a go. So thanks ever so much for that.
Very cool. Yeah. I'm glad to hear that. And yeah, if you have any questions about technique and systems, I'm here to answer any questions. All right, let's call it a day then. I'm gonna do some more celebrating here. Woo! Balloons! Balloons! And I'll see you. Whoa! I'll see you next week on Thursday, 8 p.m. sharp CET for my weekly live jams, and then latest in 1 month for the next show. And I'm gonna crowdcast people. I'm gonna send you an email where you can join our email list, or in Carl's case, the Patreon page, and support us this way and just learn more about Mission Base. You can check out my blog post. You can check out both our websites, Bandcamp and shops and YouTube channels. I really I'm lacking words. Can recommend checking out Carl's YouTube channel. Mine is just tiny itsy bitsy, but I'll take all the follows and likes and comments, feedback from you. But Carl's really way ahead of the game, so check him out. He's got so many videos which are all great quality musically as well as videographically. How do you say that? Visually, let's put it that way. And yeah, one more time, thanks for being here, celebrating my birthday and the Strictly Bass live show. See you next time. Bye-bye.